Pact Impact, the podcast, where we dive into impactful stories from the world of education, leadership, and change. I'm your host, Inyasha, and today we're doing something a little different. We're meeting virtually with the incredible Dr. Asya Johnson. Born and raised in North Philly, Dr. Johnson has over 12 years of experience in education, holding degrees from Delaware State University and Holy Family University. She's been making waves in the educational landscape from her role as the principal of Longwood Preparatory Academy in the South Bronx to being selected for the New York City's Master Principal Initiative. And if that's not impressive enough, she's now the founder of the first HBCU Early College Preparatory High School in Queens in partnership with her alma mater. We've got a lot to unpack today, so let's get right into it. So for starters, for those who may not know you beyond your work, who is Asya Johnson outside of your career and your accomplishments?
So outside of my career and accomplishments, I am a mother of three beautiful boys. I'm a boy mom. I'm also a wife to my husband of this is our 18th year together. I'm sorry, our 18th wedding anniversary, but we've been together for 25 years. We actually met in undergrad at Delaware State University. He's actually from Harlem, and which is how I got here to New York, because there was no way that man was going to stay in Philly. He was like, absolutely not. We're moving to New York. And so outside of it, I am a soccer mom on the weekends. I am a basketball mom during the weekdays, although the basketball season is over. Now I'm into full soccer mom mode. Every weekend, there's a tournament, there's a game. I will see you guys back outside in July when the soccer season is over, because right now it's consuming my life. To be honest, I mean, I have friends, my best friends and people that I hang out with, but my life is really surrounded by my husband and my kids. They're young. My oldest son is will be 23, is a graduate student finishing his master's in accounting. So, you know, just we're trucking along, parenting and working and building brand new schools at the same time.
Okay. Now I know that, there's always like a debate on TikTok between like the moms and then the people without the kids. I know you're probably leaning more towards the moms, but they always say moms, like sometimes moms don't have an identity outside of their kids. That's what they like to say, but that's just the internet talking.
Yes, it's definitely the internet talking, because I do have an identity outside of my children. I mean, I enjoy life. I really do. I travel every single year. My husband and I make it a point to every year we go on a vacation during our anniversary with just us. Um, I mean, I live in a place that is more, it is suburban like, but it not suburban like, but it is a suburb. So I love just being at home and just enjoying the space and the outdoors, because I just love that the ability to not have to go away to be able to experience something. And I can be a homebody, but around my friends, I'm a very different person.
Okay, and you were born and raised in Philadelphia. So how did your upbringing shape your perspective on education, and what ultimately led you to build your career here in New York?
So I grew up in North Philadelphia, in the 80s, which was consumed by crack cocaine at the time. My biological mom was addicted to drugs, and I recall being in seven different elementary schools by second grade, because we bounced around a lot. I mean, I lived in South Carolina for a short amount of time when I was in school, lived in shelters. In fact, that was actually the last when my mother lost custody of me, and she left me in a shelter so she can get high. And then after that, it was ever since then I was in the custody of my dad, who did not play when it came to education. He was also a student, a person who was diagnosed with dyslexia, and he couldn't read as well, but could take an entire house apart and build it back together without having even reading instruction. He was the most intelligent person that I have ever met. And he encouraged me to work hard and do all of the things that he was unable to do. So he kept telling me, you're going to college. You're going to college. He never said how, we won't pay for it. um, how it was going to happen, what I was going to major in, but he was very set on that my life and my circumstances will be very different. Um, and I remember in high school, I was accepted. I never really took school seriously. I'm sure I probably was a very smart person, but I never really thought about education in that way. I really didn't have someone. My dad worked a lot, so I don't really recall him asking me questions about homework and, going to parent teacher conferences. Although I call her my mom, but she's technically my stepmom who also helped to raise me. I only remember going to one high school um, report card conference with her. But throughout the time, I really didn't have that happening. So I do have recall being in ninth grade and being placed in the magnet program, which was for some of the top eighth graders coming into ninth grade. And the program was really hard. It was like a law and government charter or whatever. It was a little bit challenging for me, but I was passing all my classes. I did relatively well in ninth grade. And I just decided I didn't want to work that hard. And I didn't. I was like, I don't want to do, like, I can do the work, but I don't want to. This is just too hard for my liking. And so I went to my guidance counselor and asked her, can I go to a different charter? Can I do something else other than this? And without hesitation, she didn't contact my dad and say like, hey, Asia is really smart, but she's asking to get out of the magnet program. What are your thoughts about that? She didn't convince me. She just said, sure, you don't want to be in this program. Now you're in this easy program. And so for the next 4 years, no one ever talked to me about college. No one ever placed me in AP courses. I had no advanced placement opportunities, any early college opportunities at all. I unintentionally opted myself out of college and access to college and rigorous coursework by going into an easier program. I had no idea. And I met a person, a part of my high school experience was that during senior year, you have an internship in a field that you might be interested in. One time I wanted to be a nurse, so I was paired with there was an elementary school right across the street. I was with that elementary school nurse and that was a part of my internship. I met a woman who worked for the school district of Philadelphia. She was in a sorority, not sure which one, but she asked me if I wanted to go, if I ever heard of an HBCU, because I thought that I was going to go to LaSalle University in Philly to become a nurse. And I told her, nope, never heard of an HBCU, don't know what you're talking about. She said, all right, well, you know what? I am going to pay for you to go to this HBCU college tour, so that my sororities put together. And on that tour, I got to see so many HBCUs, so many people who looked like me that were on a college campus. I knew I wanted to go to college, but I had never been on a college tour outside of Temple, which I could walk to from North Philly. And that wasn't, to me, that wasn't even like going to college because I'm on Temple's campus. Temple is an open campus. I can go on Temple's campus anytime. Yeah, so to me, it wasn't anything experiential. And plus, the people on Temple campus also did not look like me, the majority of them. So going on that tour really set my mindset kind of shifted. And then when I went to Dell State, and it was exactly what I was looking for in a school, I knew that I wanted a university that wasn't too big, that if I was asking a professor a question, that I could get my question answered because there wasn't 500 other students in a classroom with me, right? I wanted to be able to know my name and say, make appointments for me and stuff like that in case I had questions. So I signed up and I applied to Dell State and got in. And then when I became a principal I was a teacher in Philly for 2 years and then moved to New York and did some teaching here. But when I became a principal, I noticed that the only students who had access to rigorous coursework were the students who are like handpicked by teachers, right? And those are usually your top students. Those are the ones that's going to go home, they're going to study, they're going to read the most, they're going to participate the most. But the ones who were sassy like me, and I was sassy little black girl. I was still, even to this day, as a principal, when people ask me about my leadership, I'm like, it's called homegirl leadership. Because I will roll my eyes and my neck is rolling too. And I'll tell kids, oh, I'm auntie. Okay, so you're not going to put me against my sister, your sister being my mom. We both agree that what you're doing is wrong, right?
Mhm.
And so being able to see kids who look like me being opted out by teachers who just didn't think they were capable. Oh no, she talks too much. She's too much of this or that, or her score isn't high enough. I shifted it to make all of my 11th and 12th grade classes, I made them into AP classes. And then it didn't matter if you were, it don't matter what score you got on the English Regents. It didn't matter where you came from. You could have been an English language learner. You could have been a student with a disability. I put English language learner teachers, they're called ESL teachers or ENL teachers, as we say in New York, and special ed teachers in those classes in those AP classes, and they co-taught. And I didn't care so much if the students didn't take the AP exam, because for me, it wasn't about kids being able to take the exam. You could take the exam if you want to, but it was about giving you rigor and access to that coursework that you didn't even believe you were capable of, and not allowing somebody to pick and choose for you and say that you're not smart enough or qualified enough for an exam. And so it was a little hard at first, but people were able to shift into it. I'm like, you're qualified people. I believe in your ability to be able to differentiate and give kids the support that they need in order to get access to it. I once had someone on LinkedIn said, "Oh, you sound so cool and nice, but I wonder about forced AP courses." And I was like, "It's not forced. It's called access."
Right.
And that's the difference. And from there, I just shifted my lens. I moved from those AP courses to now college courses. Now every student needed to take a college course. And I made that a part of my mission. Conversations I would have with parents in eighth grade, those eighth graders coming into my school, and to ninth grade, your child is going to take AP courses. They are required to take and pass a college course before they graduate from here. Because I've had parents who are like, "Oh, my child's not college material." And so who told you that?
Right.
Like, or college isn't for that notion of college isn't for everybody. Well, how do you know if you've never been there? Those are the things that always kind of, I never understood when people would say college isn't for everybody. I'm like, well, you actually have to go to college first and experience it and then say, yeah, this might not be what I want to be. Like, you can't make that decision at eighth grade or ninth and 10th grade that this isn't for you. And so shifting that, going back, my perspective of opting myself out unintentionally made me be able to create schools and opportunities for students where they did not have that option to opt out.
I don't know if you're like into God, but a conversation that I have with like one of my friends is always like, there's literally, everyone has an end goal, and although the paths could be different, you're always going to end up back there. So it's interesting to hear you say that you were placed in this program in ninth grade that would have given you access to college, and then you unintentionally opt yourself out. But it was always in God's plan for you to get there, and they still placed it in front of you for you to be able to get there. So
Absolutely.
that's definitely interesting to hear you say that. And then I went to Delaware State. Well, I went to the college tour, and I was like, oh, I want to go here. But then the financial aid it was not helping. So I said, I'll just go to a SUNY.
Yeah.
But so when you think back to the little girl growing up in North Philly, do you feel like you've accomplished the dreams that you've had?
Um, I accomplished the dreams that I had for my life. I think originally when I went to college, I told you at one point I thought I was going to be a nurse. But then when I actually had a cousin who was arrested at a young age, and we were like, that was my guy. And when he got arrested, he got like a life sentence at 17, and I was devastated about it. I mean, so much so like I couldn't even talk to him. Like I was mad at the fact that he was a teenager, but to get a life sentence at 17 is just crazy to me. And I decided then that I wanted to be a lawyer because I was like, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to fight his case. I'm going to be a criminal justice attorney. And I majored in criminal justice. And then I met a lawyer who was like, no, you should be an English major because you're going to have to write a lot of briefs. You're going to have to prepare. You're going to have to do a lot of reading and writing and studying. So I think you should shift your major to English because it doesn't matter going into law school anyway. But then once I finished college, I was like, yeah, I'm definitely not going to law school. I was like, I'm not built for going back to school right now. But in my dreams, I had always envisioned that I would have a career. I knew that I was going to be successful. Like I had dreamt that for me. I didn't necessarily see a career um, as I knew that was what I needed. I knew I needed education in order to be able to get the things that I have. And you can't come from circumstances like, living in poverty. Like when I grew up in North Philly, it was just me and my mother. My mom and my dad divorced. It was just me and my mom. And when it was just the two of us, I mean, when I talk about the level of addiction that I've seen, like I was in a house where there was no food. I didn't have toothpaste. I remember being little and was like, I wonder if I should use my toothbrush on this piece of soap. Like little kids, like stuff that I remember, and like legit trying to brush my teeth with soap because we had and no one was like guiding me, but I just thought like, well, if you can use soap for your body, you can use soap for your teeth, right? Like, worst experience ever. To the kids out there, do not use your toothbrush on a bar of soap. That's also really gross now that I think about it. Um, but there was no guidance there, right? And we had nothing. There was nothing left. She had sold everything to get drugs. So there was literally nothing but a queen size mattress left in this 4-bedroom shack or this like house that we lived in where I would just be in a room with no TV and nothing and would make up raps about like little things that were around on the floor or just like in the house because she would be downstairs getting high and I could smell it. Like, and I've been to crack houses where things that belonged to me were sold so she can get drugs. I've been places where she would buy me things and in 10 minutes that high wore off and she needed to get it again. So she's going back to the store and returning those things and taking me to the crack house of where she can then say, hey, here's X amount of money so I can get high. So you can't live and experience that and then not say, I don't want this for me in my life. You can't live in poverty where you don't have food and you see other people who, are on crack and not saying like, yeah, I'm not trying to do this as an adult, right? And some people just mentally aren't strong enough to be able to withstand that. But for me, I was like, yeah, I have to do better. And not that I was an excellent student. I've never been top of my class, but I've always had a level of intelligence that was not tapped into, unfortunately. And I didn't realize my power until I got older. I wish I would have known the level of intelligence that I had now, that I wish someone earlier would have tapped me and said, no, she got it. And then just thankfully I was able to make that learning that I had, that in level of intelligence, into something that allowed me to be innovative and creative into my careers, to be able, which only has been in education, to be able to be at the place that I'm in now.
So you've been in education for over 16 years. Would you say there was a defining moment that made you realize this was your calling in life?
Um, I think it's been longer than 16 years. Not you taking years away from me, child.
I said
Um,
over 16.
yes, I think yeah. Yeah, no, and sometimes I even forget too. So, um, when I realized this was my career was actually when I was still a teacher in Philly. Um, I started as a special ed teacher and I started in November and I was already my class's third teacher by November. And being with it, I taught in that school for 2 years and I had some of the same students for back-to-back years. So some of these kids were in self-contained and they one parent, I didn't realize it until I was telling parents like, next year I'm moving to New York. I'm not coming back to the school. I was supposed to be their teacher again next year, and the parents were happy about it. At an IEP meeting, a parent was crying and told me she was sad that I was leaving because her son had never, his reading level had never increased since he was in kindergarten in that school until I became his teacher. And I think he was a third grader because it was elementary, middle school class. And she said that she had never seen anything like that before. And it was, to me, it wasn't significant. I think he grew like 2 grade levels within the year, within the 2 years that he had been with me. She said he never wanted to read because he was so embarrassed and his reading level had never increased. And I was like, maybe I'm really good at this teaching thing. And then just the relationships that I built with students, to me, it's like I can be myself around kids. Like I don't have to be this like, if you read Zaretta Hammond's work, she talks about these different levels of warm demanders, right? And or your levels of warm demandingness. And there's the technocrats, the ones who are just like, this is my craft. I'm an English teacher. I teach literature. You either read the book and you write the essay the right way, or that's it. I'm not doing any helping. I'm not tutoring. This is what it is. Or you have the sentimentalists, the one who are like unintentionally not giving kids the support, like, oh, these little poor kids, like they don't know how to read, so I'm just going to pass them because I feel bad for the fact that they don't know how to read, right? As opposed to being really strategic, like I see something in you, I want to make sure that I close those gaps for you. Or also having the elite, or maybe I have the elitist. I was actually the first one I have messed up. Zaretta, don't kill me. I think I had them mixed up. But there's the elitist, the technocrat, the sentimentalist, and the warm demander. And I've always been a warm demander. Like, no nonsense. I love you. We're going to get this work done, though. Like, no excuses. And I've always came from the mindset of, I came from poverty. None of y'all have been through what I've been through. Okay. So it ain't that bad. And in some cases, actually, some of you might have had worse situations, but I always saw education as my way out. And I wanted to carry that for students too. And so when I started to see my positive relationships with students and how that helped me to be able to get kids to do things really well without BSing them, like I legit care about kids, like through and through. I still talk to kids from back in the day, just making sure that they're good. And that is what made me feel like I could do this. This was a career. Like, yeah, this is it. This is the one.
All right. And during your career, you did serve as the director of special education programs for District 79, which supports students incarcerated on Rikers Island and at Passage Academy. So how did that experience help shape your approach towards education?
I'm gonna tell you that probably was one besides making, obviously teaching students how to read, and really helping students with disabilities learn when they didn't feel like they had that the progress wasn't happening for them. What I love the most about working at Passages, I didn't work for them, I worked with them. And actually did my principal in New York City. You have to do an internship. Well, pretty much everywhere. I'm sure you have to do an internship in order to be a principal. I did my school leadership internship at Passages Academy in the South Bronx. And these were students who were in secure detention facilities. They have a new technical name now that I don't know. So I'm sorry for those of you who are like social justice advocates that don't come for me. I don't remember the name, but that's what it was when I was there. Um, but the being able to see youth who've made mistakes, some of which that were in special education, that they required services. The challenge was that those kids were in this transient population. They would get incarcerated. They would be there for 2 days. They were students with disabilities. Sometimes the very next day they would be gone because they went to court and they got released. And then sometimes it would be a little longer. So my job was really to help the school be able to create special education services for them in this transient setting, because you can't do what you do in a traditional public school because you're not that. So being able to support them with creating opportunities to ensure kids were still successful and they were getting their services, that was really important to me. And being able to get that job helped me to really build relationships, learn a lot on the instructional front, because as special educators, there's has been, and I've advocated for this too, that special education teachers should also be required to have content focus areas, because you can't be a master of all. So this whole notion that special ed teachers can co-teach in math, social studies, science, and English, you can't. There's no one that's that talented in and has extensive content knowledge in all four content areas and can help students who already struggle with those subjects. And so I think really being able to narrow that down has been, now the New York State is actually doing a lot of work of getting them to be able to be certified in both a content area and special ed, because that is needed. But being able to make sure that for me, that job and that career was one of the things that made me feel confident about any leadership position that I could take because of my time there. Not just because of, like, it wasn't a bad place. Like, it wasn't like kids was fighting and stabbing each other and none of that stuff there. I just felt confident because I was walking through the hallways and supporting kids, and I didn't feel any fear there. I didn't feel going to Rikers Island, and I just went a couple of weeks ago and was talking to students on Rikers Island and visiting classrooms. I felt no fear because I just felt like these are our kids that are some way fell through the system. There was something that we didn't do as educators that had led them to their circumstances, because it could have been me, but like could have been any of us. What could we have done to prevent this from happening?
Okay. And were there any moments in your journey where you felt like giving up? And if so, what kept you to keep going forward?
Um, I've never felt like I wanted to give up. I believe deeply in God and, as my Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. So, what we don't do is give up. We just press on. We know that, trouble don't last always. So whatever is going to happen is going to happen. And you just have to go through life persisting through it. And again, I think a lot of my upbringing has been the reason why I haven't let things stop me, and why I got a doctorate degree, because I knew that I just wanted to go as further as I could possibly go, right? And I wanted to do more, and I still strive to do more. What I'm doing now is like, I love being a principal. Do I want to be a principal for the rest of my life? Nope. Do I see myself in other roles as well? Yes, I do. And one that can not just impact education just in New York City or New York State, but like nationwide, systemically, right? And being able to change. And so I never had anything stop me. I've always used God as like in anything that I needed in my life. I would just count on God to be able to give me this position. When I created the proposal, I was thinking about other areas of the city, and then God said the school is going to be in Queens, and I live very, very far away from Queens, very, very, very far away from Queens. But when God says go,
So,
you go. And that's where it is. And I was no way that I was just going to be like, oh, no, thanks. It's too far from me. It's out of my comfort zone. I'm like, nope, I'm going to go.
and when you reflect on your career, is there a teacher or like a mentor who you felt like truly pushed you? And on the flip side, is there a student that you made a lasting impact on?
So mentor wise, I have a lot of mentors, but I do recall a teacher in high school, Catherine Machini. Will never forget her. This skinny old white lady was rode her bike to school every day. We always used to laugh at her. Because it would rain, sleet, snow, it don't matter. Miss Machini was riding her bike to work every single day. And she was so kind to me. She knew that I was struggling in math. Um, and she would come one day after class. She came to me because I never wanted to be a student who disrupted the learning for other kids. I was like, I don't get it, but I don't need to stop the rest of the class because I don't get it. And I think she understood that. So what she did is she asked me if what was I doing after school, and I told her I worked because I had worked. I was doing some slick stuff. I had got my grandmother to change my birth certificate to say that I was 16 when I was really 15, so I could work at Burger King. Um, and I was able to work. I was working after school, and she said that she would help me. Asked me what my hours were, because there was about an hour between my shift at work and when school got out. She was going to tutor me in math, and she didn't get paid for this. She didn't. She wasn't required to do it by any means, but she did it. And so, because she tutored me, I was able to improve my overall grade for that class. But she, I just think about her and then compare her to my algebra 2 teacher who did not care, um, who had not empathy, because I didn't need empathy. I just needed somebody to pull me to the side and say, girl, what are you doing? But instead he allowed, and I think this happens a lot, right? You allow a child to fail. I'm showing up to your class every single day, and I'm not doing well in the work. In fact, I actually used to use that class as my nap period. I would come to that class and I would sleep the entire period. And that also shows for instruction. I don't ever recall a principal or an assistant principal ever coming into that class and waking me up. I don't remember anyone ever having a conversation with me about my grade in that class. Right. And so I failed that entire year of algebra 2 and had to go to summer school for it. That was the only time I've ever been in summer school for a class. And it has been because I didn't get that same experience that I got from Miss Machini. And I would talk to her about it and ask for advice, how I would approach it. Algebra 2 was not her wheelhouse. She was an algebra 1 and a geometry teacher. She taught me geometry. I had that kind of brain. You're either an algebra thinker or a geometry thinker, and I was a geometry level thinker, so I didn't need tutoring in geometry. I was fine. But having a teacher like her and not getting the support that I needed in algebra 2 really made me think about how do you create those opportunities for kids that they want to be there because they feel supported by someone, and she just happened to be the one.
Okay. And was there a student that you know that you made a lasting impact on?
I can think about a few students that I'm still in contact with today. One of the students that I recall, her name is Abby. She was a student who um, was at my last high school where I was the principal. She was a very, very intelligent young lady, very charismatic, and was outgoing. She had got accepted to a college, and things just didn't work out. She wasn't able to go to that college. And then at the last minute, she was like, but I gotta go to school. And I want to stay on campus. She wanted that whole campus life experience. I happened to be connected with the president of a college at the time and was able to advocate for her, like, hey, she's a really smart girl. She got accepted here. Like, what could we do? And she ended up graduating from that college, got her bachelor's degree as well. When she knew that I was transitioning from my old school into this new position, reached out to me and just was like, I just want to thank you for just being I actually took a screenshot of, I can't remember, I'm sure it's saved in my phone somewhere, um but just telling me about how much she appreciated me advocating for her and just being an authentic person. And um in the past have described me as like black girl magic and somebody she really looked up to, which I really appreciated, because I don't do any of the work that I do for somebody to pat me on the back and like, this is great. I see this all as God's work and his calling. Like when you ask God to um, create opportunities for you, my gift to my service to him is to be able to serve other people through education, right? So my work is to be able to give kids the things that to see in them what somebody saw in me or did not see in me, right? But being able to give them the opportunities that I wasn't given.
And you are spearheading New York City's first HBCU prep high school in collaboration with Delaware State University. So how long has this been a dream of yours, and what was it like when you finally got the confirmation that it was happening?
So I haven't dreamed up this school. I got to tell you, it wasn't something that I was like, I got to do this thing. It just so happened that my school at the time was Longwood Prep, um, was a great school. We turned that school around. It was had a 40% graduation rate when we got there. When I got hired to turn that school around. 40% graduation rate, 77% chronic absenteeism, 12% college and career preparatory index, which just means that only 12% of the students were getting college access to college level courses. when I got there, and I hired an AP, two APs, one that was a math coach there, and then another one who was a teacher there who worked really hard for that position. And while during that time in the span, I want to say by 2023, we had moved the graduation rate to 89%. Chronic absenteeism was down to 32%. College and career prep was at 93%. And we were off the state's list. We had a thriving school, great teachers, great faculty. Like everybody's great. Parents were great. Kids were great. And I'm like, well, what else am I going to do? It was nothing else left to do, right? And it wasn't like, I mean, I could have stayed there. I could have retired from that school, but it wasn't that it needed somebody else. I think I needed something else, right? It was like I needed to birth another baby. And I had found the opportunity to, someone actually shared with me that New York City was looking for a new innovative school proposals. And I was like, oh, well, there's early college high schools, but none of them are an HBCU focus school. So what I'll do is I'll create a school that early college where kids will still get an associate's degree, but they'll also get the HBCU experience. They'll be able to get an associate's degree from an HBCU as well. I was already in talks with Dell State because they were offering college courses virtually to high school. So I was already talking to them about how to be able to bring those courses to the current school that I was in. So when I submitted the proposal and they liked the proposal, they contacted me and said, well, do you have a college partner? And I was like, sure, but I didn't talk to Dell State about this yet. And they were like, oh, okay, let us know. And I contacted Dell State and was like, hey, the vice president, Dr. Kareem McLemore, who was I believe he's the interim vice president right now. He was a different vice president at the time. And he said, yeah, absolutely, we can do that. And once he said yes, in New York City, he said yes. It was just like everything else from there was just straight planning mode and designing the school. And that's kind of where it took off from there.
Okay, and you did kind of touch on this a little bit, but the City University of New York has about 20 public schools right now that they support when it comes to the early college. So what sets your school apart from the others outside of it also being the HBCU?
Other than it being an HBCU, it's getting kids out of the city. If you look up the data of students from New York City who attend SUNYs and CUNYs, it's relatively low. Who are graduating from it, not attending. They're going, they're just not graduating from it. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure was the difference between this school is the exposure to HBCUs. There are no schools that have a direct pipeline from high school to HBCUs. In fact, most counselors, and some counselors that might hear this might say, it's not me, I'm the one that's talking about it. But in the past, there's not a lot of counselors who are encouraging students to go to HBCUs. They're not even considering it. Even when kids get accepted to them, they're convincing them that your parents make less than $125,000. You qualify for the Excelsior Scholarship. You can go to SUNY for free. You can get your master's for free. And kids are like, oh, free. Parents are like, oh, free. But they're not looking at, number one, and there's also this misconception that HBCUs don't give scholarships. One of my students yesterday just texted me a screenshot from Delaware State University that she got a partial scholarship from Delaware State. I'm like, you guys aren't applying. And then you also don't have some of the academic abilities that can get you not even ability, but you don't have the grades to be able to get to an HBCU to get a scholarship. HBCUs also historically take students with lower GPAs and lower averages than everyone else. But just like a regular college, you're going to pay, right? So while you might have these Excelsior scholarship and programs that will pay for kids to go to college because their parents make a certain amount of money, it doesn't mean they're going to be successful. So when we want to start talking to kids about colleges and universities, one, if a kid has a 1,300, 1,200 on the SATs and you're convincing them to go to a SUNY or CUNY, as opposed to saying, no, go to a Hampton, a Dell State, a Morgan State University because you can be eligible for a full ride. There's other opportunities through the Thurgood Marshall Scholarship Fund, UNCF, McDonald's has, Walmart has. Like, there's so many different scholarship opportunities that's out there. But because we don't want to do the work to get kids that exposure, the writing, because they all require recommendation letters and all of these things, we just do the easiest thing. Just go to this school for free. But then these schools that we're sending them to, these SUNYs, that we're sending to, and even CUNYs as well. And I'll tell you about some of the challenges that I've found with my students who attend CUNYs. With SUNYs, I found that a lot of these kids are going upstate New York to these schools that are freezing cold in rural areas in the wilderness, and sometimes they can't walk to corner store, walk anywhere. You have to have a car to get around, and then they're in schools with people who don't look like them.
Yeah.
Right? They either already experience racism, right? Because they're there. So you don't have professors who look like you and are invested in you. You don't have students who look like you. It's cold in New York City, but it's even colder upstate New York. And it's in the wilderness in the middle. And you're like, where are these deers? Why are these deers here? What is this? What's happening? Right? So you have all of those things that's just like, yeah, I'm going to stay here this semester. I'm not coming back in January.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the data of the number of graduates specifically from New York City, and I have to make sure that I get this data because I talk about it so much that I need to make sure that I get this the next time I'm having this conversation. But so that people understand, just because you're going for free doesn't mean you're going to graduate and that you're going to be successful. With CUNYs, what I found especially challenging with my students is a lot of them have a hard time being able to get up and go to class, get up and go to school. You're a high school student who struggles with getting up every day and going to class. Then you decide, I am going to go to BMCC, right? Because it's Manhattan, it got to be better. Everybody thinks just because it's in Manhattan is better. It's not true, people. It's not true. Just because it's in Manhattan doesn't make it better. And so when they do that, I'm like, so you got a 9 o'clock class, and most seniors in our school, we made their schedule. They didn't need a first period. They didn't did most of their classes. Their class, they wouldn't start till 9:05. You can't get to your high school class at 9:05. You're not going to make it to Manhattan at 9:05 either. And then they don't. And then I'm like, what happened? Why? I thought you were going to BMCC, or I thought you were going to City College. Yeah, I was having a hard time and I wasn't making it to my class on time and this and that. Or I also have this really tumultuous hardship at home, right? And I got to deal with that every day because my parent is not seeing me as a full-time college student. They're seeing me as a person who still lives in their house, and I'm still responsible for making sure my sister and brother gets to their school every day. My parent is either sick or they work a lot, and I got to do a lot of the household stuff. But I also have this college level work that I'm responsible for. And so because there is no dorms and I'm not staying on campus and I'm staying here, I got to figure out how to study for my college work and be able to persist through that while also being able to do the same responsibilities my parent wanted me to do as a high school student. But now only difference is I'm in college, right? And so I haven't seen a lot of success with my students going to CUNYs because they still have this life that they're responsible for. Parents are still like, you got to work. You got to pick your sister up. You got to watch your baby brother, or you got to do X, Y, and Z. And it doesn't matter that you're a college student that's taking 15 college credits. Figure it out. And they struggle through that. And so going away and being on a college campus with people who look like you has been the place where I'm like, you want to get away from all of this? I always saw education as my way out. And trying to encourage people to also like envision yourself as a 24-year-old. If you are, and this is not everyone's situation, but some of the kids that I spoke to, I would always ask the question of how many people live in your apartment with you? Do you live in an apartment? Most people in New York City live in. And they would say, yeah, we have a 2-bedroom apartment, it's 6 of us. So I'm like, imagine I was like, so everybody, I would imagine that everyone doesn't have a bedroom, or somebody might sleep on a pull-out couch or whatever it is. They're like, yeah, me and my sister, we share a bed on a couch, a pull-out couch. So I was like, I want to fast forward to the time where you're now 24 years old and you decided you don't want to go to college. And your sister, who's older than you, who who shares the couch with you, now has a baby. Like, I just want you to start envisioning what your life, like picture all of these things with all of these nuances that come into play, right? And you like, just think about what your life, if you envision things differently for your life, you have to envision your future self and what this might means, what it might mean for you. And when you have kids do those like visualizations, you can see kids like, I didn't think about that. I'm like, yeah, because it's different when you're 16 years old and your parent is like, I'm paying for your cell phone bill, and your sneakers, your clothes, your nails, your hair, and all of those things. And then when you get to 20, they're like, you grown now. You got to figure it out. So let's start envisioning what your life could be as opposed to what it is now.
So how has the support, because the school is going to be in the southeast of Queens, correct?
Correct.
So how has the support from that community and your own village helped you throughout the journey?
Oh my God, incredible. Or like the Queens community in general is something to be applauded. I have never seen so many people just like stand up and applaud. They have been waiting and advocating for this school before it was even birthed from my mind. They had already been advocating for an accelerated high school in that area. And so many different people I have met and talked to, so many different councils. I was like, where are these councils in different places in the Bronx? Because I felt like I was on the streets in the Bronx, and I have never met so many people who are like, we want this school to win. Community people, when I was recruiting, they put together a community pep rally, had marching band, step team, majorettes. They had HBCU graduates that were there that were talking about the school, encouraging people to apply. They had brought in, we invited a whole bunch of parents to come in and students so that they can learn more about the school. We had an organization who's actually from the Bronx, it's a coalition, the Cologne Foundation, sorry, Cologne Foundation, actually donated snacks and stuff for the event. So they just like threw a big rally and had, all the parents come out. Um, there was people inviting me I went to the Jamaica branch NAACP and did a presentation there. I got invited to churches and did presentations there. um, Community centers all in Far Rockaway, just, doing presentations for family. And they fed people dinner. It was like a late on Friday night. And just like these people want to make sure that the school succeeded in every way and at least have the number of recruitment, which for us was 1,000 applicants for 100 seats, which was incredible. And it was because of the community how the word got out, just making sure that everybody knew about the school and they knew about the opportunity as well. So we made sure that they made sure that, they were supporting me. Even to this day, when I met with parents and kids for the first time, they were like, we thank you for creating a school and this opportunity for our kids. What can we do for you? And I was like, oh, I feel so loved and taken care of. I feel seen, you know. And it was good because you had the community asking you, what can I do for you?
So, given the current state of the education system, what advice would you give to young Black and Brown students who are in college right now pursuing careers in education?
Um, One, I would definitely tell them to make sure it's not good enough for you to just know your content. I think for me, a great framework for teaching and learning are the works of Gloria Billings, who's also from Philly. She's the creator of culturally responsive pedagogy. Also, Zaretta Hammond's work around culturally responsive teaching in the brain framework as well, which I also think is really important. for kids to be able to, I mean, new student people who are coming up, because if you're looking at the work of that, it's not even talking about like how to teach Black kids. It's talking about how to be able to get kids to be independent learners, how to get kids to be thinkers, and not just receivers of information. And when I talk to people all the time about how my school, when we use Hammond's framework, we talked about getting students to be thinkers, would allow them to be able to compete with any student, any race, right? And it had nothing to do with like, oh, if you're a Black student or you're a Hispanic student or whatever it is. If I can get you to think critically, if I can get you to be a problem solver and be not just a critical thinker, but someone who questions and doesn't, because I'm one of those people, I don't take no for an answer. I'm like, what do you mean no? I got to be a way around the no. And getting kids to be able to get kids to self-discover that is all within us is going to help them prepare to be better teachers. So I highly recommend the work of Zaretta Hammonds around her Ready for Rigor framework. I really encourage all teachers who are coming into their own to really study what it means to be a warm demander, what it means to build students' intellective capacity as learners, because that's very critical for them to be able to compete. That was my way of being. When I say I'm being culturally responsive, it's not just reading Baldwin books, from books that James Baldwin. That's not going to make you a better teacher or a better person. Is how you think critically with his work, but it's also the same thing that you would do with Shakespeare. But being able to question what Shakespeare wrote, right? Being able to read dystopian literature and saying like, wow, how is this very similar to what we're experiencing today? And so thinking that from that lens is being able to come in with your own teaching framework. Don't wait for the school to say, this is what we do here. Have your own teaching philosophy that is going to help all students be able to excel, but especially those that don't that look just like you, because those are the ones that are mostly misrepresented in education and the ones that are 10 times likely to not be considered for jobs, or not be thought of as being intellectually capable. But I think teachers of this generation can definitely change that.
Okay, and last question, but 10 years from today, when people hear Dr. Asya Johnson, what would you like for them to think of?
What do I want them to think of? I want them to think of me as an innovator. And when I say innovation in education, and the reason why that's important is because excuse me, I want them to be able to think about how I was able to create something that didn't exist. And so you can create and develop your own path. You have the ability to say, this didn't exist, so I created it. And I want people to feel confident to be able to say that there's a gap in our system, whatever that system might be, and that you fill that gap. And for me, the gap was in New York City specifically. In the state of New York, there is no historically Black college or university. Love Medgar Evers. They are a historically Black institution. They are not a designated HBCU. It's a great college and university. Also have a really great early college program at their school too. Shout out to Brooklyn. If you're in Brooklyn, definitely check out Medgar Evers High School as an option. But being in New York City and having, especially New York City students, a lot of them are coming to 30% of Del State students are from New York City, 30%. And so when you think about other colleges and universities, how can we increase that number? So we think about the kids we're sending to the SUNYs and the CUNYs. How can we shift it so that those kids get a better experience? We're telling our top students, go to Harvard, go to Yale, go to Stanford, go to Princeton. Why not go to a Black college? Why are we taking our talents and our intellectual and athletic talents to PWIs when we can go and do those same things at HBCUs? And I want people to know, that for me, if I can be remembered for anything, it's more innovation, more creativity, more And I'm nicknamed out here as the HBCU principal, which I actually think is really cute. As the HBCU principal, I actually think that's really cute.
All right. So thank you for tuning in to this inspiring episode of Black Pact Impact. A huge thanks to Dr. Asya Johnson for sharing her journey and wisdom with us today. Her dedication to education and empowering future leaders is truly remarkable. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your community. Until next time, keep making an impact.